How do? Another beer review. But it's a respectable hour. It's a sunny day. It's we're well into the afternoon now. I'm going to do a beer review. And the beer that I'm going to review today is another Hatherwood. This is Hatherwood Ruby Ale. It says it's a blend of pale and crystal malts. There must be something red in it as well though, because not many crystal malts give you a ruby colour, and it's 5% by volume. It says this ruby ale is a true British classic, craft brewed using 100% British barley and a blend of pale and crystal malts to give a spicy fruit aroma and a warming malt and toffee flavour. This ale sits right at the top of the pecking order. Oh, pecking order. It's got a rooster. Now, I'll say from the off that I'm not a big fan of ruby ales. I'm not a fan of my own. I don't seem to be a fan of anybody else's. I've liked beers that were really quite red, but anything that's been actually officially termed ruby ale, I've been fairly nonplussed about. To date, but you never know. So I've got my glass, I've got my opener, and I've got this ruby ale. What I'm going to plunder. Without much more ado, let's get it open. Give it a pour. Quite carbonated, I'll come back for that bit. So, it doesn't even actually look that red, does it really? Ruby? Is that a ruby? Maybe a bit. A little bit. Well, let's go for some aroma. Yeah, I'm not good at this. I'm not, and I've got a bit of an ear infection. Slight temperature. Probably shouldn't be doing reviews at all. I'm going to stop after about 10 or so, for the sake of my health today. But yeah, I can't. I mean, you can smell this hop. It's very faint to me. Really, I can just smell the malt. I've not got a great nose though. Let's give this a flavour test. Well, I mean, it's going to take a little while for me to get my palate in, but already I can tell you it's got a good body. Was it 5%? Yeah, there's a good body to that. There's a decent mouth feel. I can taste the crystal malt. Well, what can I say? That's a well balanced beer. There's a slight after swang. Can't quite work out what that is yet. The allergy advice says it contains barley. I think we knew that. But I suppose it's got to say, isn't it? Yeah, blend of pale and crystal malts. Crystal malts. Is the malts plural because it's more than one crystal malt? Or is it that it's a blend of pale and crystal malts? There are different types of crystal malts. Lighter ones and darker ones and stuff. It's got a reasonable carbonation. Not too fizzy. Let's have another go. Yeah. Well, I've got to say that I think that's really quite drinkable. Quite surprised. I confess I have had this before. When I first encountered it, it was a different brewery. What was brewing it? And so it was a different recipe. And it was definitely redder because those early Hatherwood beer bottles were just like the Shepherd Neame ones, and that's pretty rare, that style of bottle, elsewhere. And they were clear, and so you could see the beer through it. And I remember it being red, but I remember it tasting red, and it wasn't really for me. It was the price that was for me. I bought it and bought it again and again until I realised I didn't like it, because it was so incredibly reasonable. Incredibly. But I'm going back away. And I think there was a point in time where all the Hatherwood beer moved from one brewery to another. And then it changed to this type of bottle. And I think at that point, it changed to a different brewery. We thought it could be Hogsback, perhaps. Or maybe it's brewed by more than one different brewery, the different beers, but under the Hatherwood name. I don't know. I bet somebody does. But this is improved. I think this is improved. This recipe is better than when it was in a different style bottle. Distinctly. And I think it's possibly less ruby and a bit more bittery. Let's have another go. There's definitely a bitter bite. Yeah, very nice. That's a good beer. I've no issue with that whatsoever. That's pretty smooth. The balance in this is great. There's just enough hop to bitter it. It's a really good balance. I'd say English hops, because they're not fruity. It said English malts, it didn't say English hops, but it's pretty savoury. And it's smooth, a little bit creamy. It's really only bitter on the way out. It's a pleasant bitterness. There's a slight twang on the way out. Very good though. It's a very good beer. And were I to have brewed this, and I have brewed things similar, I'd be pretty happy with that. I would, because it's drinkable. That's not an effort to drink. I mean, you have to like the style. You have to like a more bitter-like beer. But I'd say that's closer to a bitter than a ruby beer. Ruby ale tends to have lots of Cara red in it, or something. But lots of red. And because of the high proportion of specialty malt, for something that isn't, say, a stout or a porter or something, it's a little testing. Most ruby ales that I've tried, if you're fond of porters, if you regularly drink porters or stouts, you'd like them. It would be lighter and more refreshing than such a beer. But if you're more up the pale and bitter end of the scale of things, some ruby ales, for the sake of being that red, for me have slightly overdone the base to speciality malt ratio. Well, that sounded quite technical, didn't it? I think I impressed myself there. So if we've come to the stick or twist bit, would I be happy enough to stay on this beer for the evening and not take a chance on some of the others? It depends what some of those others are, but overall I'd say stick. I'm surprised. I think it's because it's not especially ruby. I think this is a sticker. I would take the chance on something else, but it'd have to be good, or I'd come back. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Hatherwood Ruby Ale from Lidl. You'll not be disappointed with that, if that's your kind of thing. It wasn't mine until now. Anyhow, In the interest of not allowing this review to go on forever, I like this stuff. What would I twin it with? If I were to twin this with anything, it might be a Shepherd Neame. It's not as strong as, and not as characterful as Bishop's Finger, but actually, that twang, that sort of twang it's got to it, that isn't dissimilar to a Shepherd Neame beer anyway. Yeah, maybe a Bishop's Finger, a little milder than a Bishop's Finger, but I think that's about as close as I'm going to get to it within the range of my experience. I think that just about wraps it up. Pleasantly surprised, and I would be interested to know what anybody else thinks. Yeah, that's it. Cheery bye.